I brought history's deadliest enemies back to life, and now they're finally face to face. Their battles were different, their reasons even more so, but all of them share one thing: they never expected to meet again. Until now. Let's begin with Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia, and the man whose order ended the Romanov dynasty. He gave up the throne, hoping it would calm the chaos, but it didn't. Lenin took power, and Nicholas was arrested, moved from place to place under guard. By the time they reached Ekaterinburg, he and his family were completely cut off from the world. One night, they were told to get dressed and led to the basement. Minutes later, everything changed. The Romanov family never left that room. Abraham Lincoln ended slavery, and that made him a symbol of change, but for some, it also made him a target. John Wilkes Booth grew up loving the South. He believed Lincoln had humiliated it. To Booth, Lincoln wasn't saving the country, he was tearing it apart. He watched Lincoln's speeches, mocked him on stage, called him a tyrant. And when the war ended, Booth didn't feel peace. He felt revenge. He followed Lincoln to Ford's Theater, waited for the right moment. And while the president sat beside his wife, thinking the war was finally over, Booth pulled the trigger, and history split in half. Ulysses S. Grant fought to hold the Union together. Robert E. Lee fought for the South he called home. They were brilliant, respected, and locked in a war that tore their country apart. More Americans fell in that war than in any other, and through it all, Grant and Lee stayed the course. No insults, no rage, just decisions that would shape millions of lives. When it was finally over, Grant didn't celebrate. He looked his enemy in the eye and showed him respect, because in that moment, they both knew no one really won. Nikola Tesla came to America with ideas that could change the world: free power, wireless energy, no limits. At first, he worked for Thomas Edison, but when Tesla's inventions challenged Edison's control, things turned ugly. Edison refused to pay him, laughed at his ideas, called them impossible, but Tesla didn't stop. He built, he failed, he built again. And though he died alone, misunderstood, today, it's Tesla's current that lights up the planet. Al Capone ruled Chicago through fear and money, and he made sure everyone knew it. Police, judges, politicians, most had a price. But Eliot Ness didn't. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous. But he had something Capone couldn't buy, a line he wouldn't cross. Capone mocked him, called him a boy playing detective, but Ness didn't stop. He couldn't touch the violence, but he found the paper trail. And in the end, the man who laughed at the law was taken down by it. Leon Trotsky helped lead the revolution. He built the Red Army. He stood beside Lenin. Joseph Stalin watched and waited. After Lenin's passing, many believed Trotsky would take the lead. But Stalin had other plans. He pushed Trotsky out, stripped him of power, forced him into exile. Trotsky warned the world about Stalin's rise. And then, in Mexico, a man came to see him, with an ice axe and orders. One ruled with fear, the other never left that room. Jesse James was in his 20s when he became a symbol of rebellion. To some, he was a Southern folk hero. To others, a criminal with a cause. But to Alan Pinkerton, he was a direct threat to order. In 1875, Pinkerton's men threw a firebomb into the James family home. His brother lost an arm, his mother lost her hand, and Jesse lost any sense of mercy. What started as outlawry turned into revenge. John Brown saw slavery as a crime against humanity and believed violence was the only way to end it. He led a raid on a federal arsenal, hoping to start an uprising. Jefferson Davis called him a terrorist who wanted to destroy the South. Brown was captured, put on trial, and hanged. But in the North, people saw him as a man who gave his life for a cause. Davis went on to lead the Confederacy. Brown was gone, but his actions pushed the nation toward war. They stood on opposite sides of a question that would tear the country apart. Napoleon III wanted to prove he could shape Europe like his uncle once did, but Bismarck had a different plan and more patience. He drew Napoleon into a war Germany was ready for. At Sedan, the French army collapsed. Napoleon was taken prisoner, his empire gone. Bismarck didn't just win a battle, he united Germany and shattered France's pride. For Napoleon, it was the ultimate humiliation. For Bismarck, it was the moment he changed history. To Churchill, Gandhi was a threat, not just to the empire, but to order itself. To Gandhi, Churchill represented everything he stood against: domination, pride, and control. Gandhi used nonviolence as a weapon. Churchill used prisons, blockades, and ridicule. He tried to silence Gandhi, to break his movement, but it didn't work. India moved toward freedom. Churchill never forgave him. Gandhi never feared him. One tried to hold on to an empire, the other fought to tear it down. They both dreamed of justice for the working class, but their visions were enemies. To Proudhon, Marx was arrogant, too hungry for control, too obsessed with theory. To Marx, Proudhon was naive, confused, weak, dangerously wrong. They began as allies. But when Proudhon published his ideas, Marx tore them apart, publicly, brutally. He mocked him, dismissed him, erased the friendship. It wasn't just a clash of minds. It was war between two futures. One was a man of faith, the other, a man of science. Wilberforce mocked Darwin's theory, called it absurd, even dangerous. And Huxley didn't hold back. When Wilberforce asked if he came from a monkey through his grandfather or grandmother, Huxley answered coldly, "I'd rather have an ape for an ancestor than a man who uses his mind to distort the truth." The room went silent. This wasn't just about evolution. It was pride versus reason, status versus challenge, and neither man ever backed down. They weren't just allies, they were friends. Roosevelt trusted Taft to carry on his legacy, to fight for progress, for the people. But once in power, Taft changed. He grew close to big business. He reversed reforms Roosevelt had fought for. It felt like betrayal. Roosevelt returned, not just to politics, but to war against the man he once called brother. Their friendship collapsed. The Republican Party split, and two proud men found themselves on opposite sides of history and of each other. Her name was Virginia, Countess de Castiglione. She was Napoleon III's mistress, and that made her a target for Empress Eugénie. Eugénie couldn't stand her, not because of love, but because of how bold she was. The Countess took portraits wearing royal-style dresses. She appeared at court as if she belonged there. To Eugénie, it was disrespect. They didn't argue in public, but everyone felt the tension. It was a quiet power struggle, and neither woman was willing to back down. Oscar Wilde was bold, brilliant, and unafraid to be himself. But his close relationship with Queensberry's son led to trouble. The Marquis left a note in a private club, calling Wilde something scandalous. Wilde sued for libel and lost. That opened the door to a criminal case. Suddenly, Wilde wasn't the one accusing. He was defending himself. He was arrested, tried, and imprisoned. Queensberry didn't win on principle. He attacked Wilde's life and broke it apart. Wilhelm II wanted glory. He built armies, gave speeches, and dreamed of dominating Europe. Clemenceau wanted justice. When war broke out, France suffered terribly. But Clemenceau didn't flinch. He called for total resistance and made it happen. Wilhelm mocked him, but in the end, it was Clemenceau who stood at the peace table, while Wilhelm ran from his own people and disappeared into exile. For Clemenceau, that wasn't victory. That was justice served cold. They would meet years later, but even in youth, their worlds were on a collision course. When they finally met, It wasn't just admiration. It became control. Chertkov isolated Tolstoy from friends, strained his family, and claimed to guard his legacy. But behind the devotion was obsession. In the end, Tolstoy left it all: the estate, the fame, even Chertkov. He died far from home. And Chertkov, he stayed behind to rewrite the story on Tolstoy's behalf.